Chapter 1. Awakening in the storm. In the frosty winds sweeping over Kiev's hills, a nation awoke from its long slumber. It was a time when the Russian Empire shed its imperial skin, and the fire of revolution lit up the horizon. Mikhailo, a young farmer from the countryside outside the city, stood among thousands in the square, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. The Tsar had fallen, and with him the old order. Ukrainians, who had so long been shadows in others' empires, now began to whisper of their own voice. The Central Rada, that council of intellectuals, poets, and soldiers formed in the glow of February Revolution's chaos, became the heart of this awakening. Mikhailo, who had left his plough to fight at the front, heard the speeches echoing, "We are no longer subordinates. Ukraine shall speak for itself." But the revolution carried poison. In Petrograd, the Bolsheviks seized power through a bloody coup, and their red banners waved like a warning. They promised equality, but for Ukrainians, it meant only new chains. Mikhailo felt the intensity in the air, the tension like an arrow ready to be loosed. As Bolshevik troops marched toward Kiev, the Rada gathered soldiers from the villages. Mikhailo seized a rifle, his hands not trembling from fear, but from a burning longing for the land he loved. The battles erupted by the rivers, where bullets whistled like winter's gales. They fought not for emperors or czars, but for a dream of freedom. In the darkness of the night, around the fires, they sang songs of Cossacks and liberty, and in their eyes gleamed the hope of a morning without yoke. Chapter 2. The call of independence. Winter's chill bit into the bones as Mikhailo and his comrades stood guard at the Rada building. It was a day that would echo through history. Ukraine declared its independence as the People's Republic. The blue and yellow flag was raised, and cheers rose like a wave over the city. But the joy was short-lived. The Bolsheviks, the Red Revolutionaries, saw this as a betrayal of the New World Order they dreamed of. Their armies, swollen with fanatics and desperate soldiers, pressed forward from the east, their footsteps like drums in the distance. The intensity escalated to a fury. Mikhailo led a small unit through snowy fields where every step could be the last. They pushed back at the bridges over the Dnieper, where the ice cracked under cannon fire's roar. One night, in an abandoned manor, they found letters from Bolshevik agents promising bread and land to those who yielded. But Mikhailo tore them apart, his voice hard as steel. "Our land is ours, not theirs to dole out." The fights were brutal, bayonets gleaming in the moonlight, screams echoing over the plains. Yet, amid the chaos, unity grew. Farmers, students, priests, all united under the Republic's banner. Hope's spark ignited in small victories. They drove the invaders from Kiev's gates, and for a moment, freedom felt tangible. Mikhailo, with blood on his cheek from a graze, gazed out over the river and whispered, "This is only the beginning. We have awakened the lion within ourselves." Chapter 3. The Sword of Alliance. As winter yielded to a false spring, an unexpected ally knocked at the door. Germany and Austria-Hungary, exhausted by the Great War, saw Ukraine as salvation. Their troops marched in, not as enemies, but as allies against the Red Hordes. Mikhailo, now a sergeant in the Republic's army, met them with mixed feelings, gratitude for the weapons, but distrust of the foreign uniforms. Together, they expelled the Bolsheviks from the city, and for an instant, freedom bloomed. But the alliance bore seeds of betrayal. The Germans demanded grain for their machines, and when they received too little, they turned against the Republic. The battles exploded into a whirlwind of chaos, now not only against the Reds, but against those who had come as friends. Mikhailo led an ambush in the forests, where the foliage hid their movements. His heart pounded like a drum as they crept forward, rifles ready. A German patrol fell into the trap, but the price was high. One of his closest comrades fell, his body still in the wet earth. The intensity reached new heights as Polish forces also pressed in from the west, hungry for old borders. Mikhailo fled through the night, a wounded comrade over his shoulder, while bullets whipped the trees. Yet in that darkness, they found strength in songs of ancient heroes. "We do not bend," he muttered, as they hid in a cave. Hope lived in the knowledge that every blow, every wound, etched their will deeper into history's stone. Chapter 4. The guerrillas' fury. Summer's heat turned Ukraine's fields into battlegrounds of dust and blood. The Republic's armies splintered, but from the ashes rose a new force, the guerrillas. Nestor Makhno, the wild anarchist from the south, swept in like a whirlwind with his black banners. Mikhailo allied with them, an unlikely bridge between Republicans and rebels. Together, they struck at convoys in the night, their horses galloping like ghosts over the steppes. The battles became a dance with death, ambushes in ravines, nocturnal raids on Bolshevik camps. Mikhailo felt the pulse of adrenaline as they slipped through the reeds, the air thick with anticipation. Once, on a stormy night, they stormed a stronghold by the river. Explosions lit up the sky, screams mingled with thunder's rumble. They won but lost half their men. In the aftermath, Mikhailo sat by the fire, staring into the flames. "Why do we fight?" asked a young recruit. "Because to surrender is to die," he replied. "And to live is to dream." The White Army, the Tsar's loyalists, appeared as another shadow, but their chaos only amplified the red pressure. Mikhailo watched the horizon covered in red banners, but in his chest burned a fire that did not fade. Every guerrilla strike was a reminder. Freedom could not be crushed, only buried in the soil until the right time. Chapter 5. The seed that grows as autumn leaves fell like tears over the battlefields. The war reached its climax. The Republic's leaders fled eastward, and the Bolsheviks' iron grip closed around the land. Mikhailo, exhausted and wounded, stood on a hill and watched the red columns march into Kiev. It was a defeat, but not an end. In the shadows of the burning villages, survivors hid, whispering promises of return. Mikhailo returned to his village, now under the new yoke, but he carried the memory of the flag that had flown free. Years passed, and oppression drained the soil's vitality, but the seed of independence sprouted in secret. Poets wrote in the shadows, farmers sang forbidden songs, and in hearts the fire burned on. It was this fire that, over a century later, ignited today's resistance against a new invader. Today, as Ukraine's people stand united against the darkness from the east, Mikhailo's saga echoes. Those who fought in 1917 knew that freedom is not won in a single battle, but in the will to rise again. In Kiev streets, under the blue and yellow flag, hope lives, a hope that never dies, but only waits for the next spring. For Ukraine is not just a place, it is a flame that shines through the storms, a reminder that the courage in a nation's soul always finds its way home. Epilogue, the legacy of the flame time, has covered their names with dust, but the fire beneath the ashes still glows. Mikhailo's footsteps are long gone from Ukraine's fields, yet every soldier, every mother, every child who stands today carries a spark of his spirit in their hearts. The freedom he dreamed of was stolen, shattered, and reborn again and again. But a flame does not die from darkness. It dies only when belief fades. As modern Ukraine faces its trial, the echoes of old songs return in the wind. They are not only songs of the past, but promises to the future, that as long as someone remembers, as long as someone loves their homeland more than their fear, Ukraine's flame will never die.